think it should be her real dad who walks her down the aisle." That's what she said. No warning, no apology. Just dropped it on me like she was reading off a grocery list. I didn't respond right away. I just blinked. Once, twice, then set down the spoon I was using to stir the damn chili I'd been cooking all afternoon. Homemade. Her favorite. Black bean and beef. Spicy, just the way Susan liked it. I even remembered the cornbread. "Come again?" I asked, not looking at her.
Susan folded her arms, leaned against the counter like this wasn't the moment she was detonating 18 years of fatherhood. "It's not personal, John. Emily just thinks, well, it's her wedding. She wants her biological father to give her away." I finally turned. The kitchen felt smaller than usual, tighter somehow. "You mean Rick? The guy who vanished in 2006 and hasn't so much as mailed her a postcard?" Susan sighed, that long exhale she always used when I was about to overreact. "She's just curious." He's reconnected with her a little, and I cut in, keeping my voice low. "Let me get this straight. I pay for the venue, the dress, the catering, the photographer. Hell, I even fronted the down payment on their honeymoon cruise. But when it comes to the aisle, the one symbolic moment where I'd stand by the girl I raised, she picks the man who bailed before she lost her first baby tooth." Susan didn't answer. I knew that silence. I'd heard it in different forms over the years, when she defended Emily's bratty phases, when she made excuses for her freeloading brother, when she forgot our anniversary but meant well. It was the silence of someone who made a decision days ago and was only now informing me. She'd prefer you not attend. Actually, she added almost too quickly, like she knew that was the part that would really cut. There it was, not just a slap, a full backhand, open palm straight to the soul. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the chili. I didn't ask how the hell she could sit there in the house I rebuilt with my own hands next to the cabinets I refinished the summer Emily left for college and say that to my face, like I was just a wallet with a pulse. Instead, I reached for the cabinet, pulled out a beer, warm, hadn't chilled them yet, and cracked it open. I took a long sip, staring at the backsplash tile I installed the year before, the one Emily helped me choose. I didn't ask why. I already knew. I'd seen the signs, subtle ones. Her growing distance, the way she'd pause when I called her kiddo, how she'd flinch when someone asked, "Is that your dad?" And she'd just say, "He raised me like I was a foster parent with an expiration date." "All right," I said finally. Susan blinked. What I said, "All right," I repeated, calm, measured, like a man who just realized the last page in the book was a punchline. And I meant it, because right then I understood something they didn't. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was clarity. They'd made their choice. Now I was going to make mine. The house was silent. That kind of silence that doesn't just fill the air, it presses down on you, thick and heavy. The kind of silence that lets you hear your own pulse when you're trying not to think. John sat in his study, a small converted garage space that smelled faintly of engine oil and cedar shavings. On the desks at the wedding folder, Emily's wedding folder, once color-coded, now dog-eared and overstead. In it were invoices, receipts, fabric swatches, the kinds of things you collect when you're investing in someone else's dream. He opened his laptop and pulled up his email. Subject, final tuxedo fitting, confirmation required. The cursor blinked at him. He clicked reply. Please cancel my appointment. Something's come up. Regards, John M. That was the first cut. He closed the tab, then opened another. This one bookmarked years ago. Never used Kodiak Wilderness Charters. A week-long deep-sea fishing trip in Alaska. All-inclusive room, board, gear, and solitude. He had saved the link 5 years back, dreaming of a retirement trip he never took. He hovered over the Book Now button, paused, then clicked. 5 minutes later, his credit card number was punched in, and the confirmation email dinged into his inbox. That was the second cut. Next, he opened his banking app. There was one last wire to complete the wedding band. Platinum, $2,000. Custom, matched with Forever starts today. Emily had picked the inscription. He stared at it a long while. Forever cute. He sighed and tapped Send Payment. That was the third cut. 3 clean, quiet slices. No yelling, no confrontations, no righteous speeches about betrayal. He was beyond all that. This wasn't a man walking away from his family. This was a man realizing he was never really in it. John reached under the desk and pulled out the tackle box. It hadn't seen daylight in years, tucked next to a pair of old steel-toe boots and a photo of Emily, age 12, holding her first trout. He looked at that photo for a long time. She'd had braces then, crooked bangs too. Called him Dad without a trace of hesitation. He placed it face down in the drawer. Then he stood, opened the closet and pulled out his weatherproof duffel bag. Slowly, methodically, he packed thermal underwear, fleece, socks, gloves, his best pocket knife, a paperback copy of Old Man in the Sea, a small silver flask. He left the wedding invite on his desk. He didn't leave a note, didn't text, didn't knock on Susan's door. When the zipper closed and the duffel hit the floor with a soft thud, something in him sealed shut with it. By dawn, he'd be on a plane to Anchorage, then onward to Kodiak. He was done being the man who waited to be picked. Susan wore her favorite cream cardigan to book club that night, the one with pearl buttons and smug invincibility woven into the seams. She brought lemon bars, store-bought but transferred to her own plate so they'd seem homemade, and a bottle of Chardonnay she only dusted off for occasions. And tonight was a victory lap. The women gathered in Marcia Delane's sunroom, sipping, gossiping, pretending they'd all read the assigned memoir. But Susan couldn't wait. The smile tugged at her lips before the cork even popped. "How's wedding prep going?" Marcy asked, half listening, already fishing for something juicy. Susan set her glass down with theatrical restraint. "Oh, we've had a tiny change of plans." She let it sit for effect. Then, Emily decided she wants her biological father to walk her down the aisle. Gasps. Not shocked gasps, more the excited, gossipy kind. The kind that smell blood in the water. "Rick," one of them blinked. "Isn't he?" "I thought he was out of the picture." Susan shrugged that rehearsed shrug that says, "I'm above drama, but if you insist." He reached out. They've reconnected. It's been healing for her, and John's okay with it. Someone finally asked. Susan sipped her wine. Totally. He was surprisingly mature about it. Translation, he didn't scream, so I won. She didn't mention the way he stared at the backsplash after she said it, or the silence that followed like a dropped coffin. No, she rebranded as quiet as cooperation. Made it palatable, digestible, her narrative polished and port. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Emily was tweeting from the couch. "Can't believe it's happening. So thrilled my real dad will be giving me away." Loudly crying face, red art, number blessed, number wedding week. The likes came fast. Cousins, Old college friends, even a couple of her nursing school classmates chimed in. "Oh my God, this is beautiful. So glad you get this moment." Ring. Rick hadn't responded to her last message or the one before that. In fact, the last real conversation they'd had was 3 months ago when he commented on a Facebook picture of her and her fiancé. "You look so grown up." That was it. No follow-up, no calls, no plans. Still, she believed, or wanted to. She built up this perfect moment in her head, her arm linked with the man who shared her blood, stepping out into the warm light of the ceremony while guests stood in admiration. Maybe he'd cry. Maybe she would, too. She didn't ask herself what it would mean to walk past the empty seat where John would have sat. Didn't think about the fact that her real dad had never once been the one patching scraped knees or sitting through choir concerts in gymnasiums that smelled like sweat and hot dogs. That wasn't Rick. That was John. But narrative is a funny thing. You tell it enough times, you start to believe it. Susan believed hers, too, that John was fine, that she had been reasonable, that her daughter's choice was rooted in healing and not betrayal. She refilled her glass at book club and moved on to her thoughts about the memoir, some half-baked insight about forgiveness. And not once did it occur to her that the man she thought she dismissed quietly had vanished with more intention than she could comprehend. Because victory only feels sweet when you haven't realized what you've actually lost. The sun over Boulder was ruthless that day. Bright, unforgiving, too cheery for how things were about to go. The ceremony was set up outdoors at a sprawling estate just outside the city. White folding chairs, roses lining the aisle. A string quartet rehearsed quietly under a canopy, their notes just slightly out of sync from nerves or heat. Guests filtered in slowly, dressed in pastel linens and overpriced shoes, dabbing their foreheads with programs that doubled as fans. Emily sat in the bridal suite surrounded by mirrors and bridesmaids and curling irons, but her eyes were locked on the phone in her lap. One unread message, not from him, just a florist asking if she still needed extra boutonnieres. Relax. One of her bridesmaids cooped, mistaking her silence for jitters. You're glowing. Emily forced a tight smile. Her bouquet was already wilting at the edges, same as her confidence. She adjusted the hem of her custom dress, the one John had paid for, and looked toward the door as if he might walk in with that familiar knock, holding a cup of coffee like he used to on school mornings. But there was only silence and Susan. Downstairs, Susan paced outside the main hall with her phone pressed tight to her ear, knuckles white. Voicemail again. Rick, it's Susan. Where are you? The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Emily's waiting. Everyone's waiting. Call me. She hung up, then called again. Voicemail. The event planner, trying her best to keep the machine running, approached. Is everything all right with the processional order? Susan plastered on a smile like a wax mask. Yes, just a slight delay. Her father's running a little behind. Should we delay the ceremony? No, Susan said quickly. No, he'll be here. But he wouldn't. She knew that somewhere in the pit of her gut. Knew it when she scrolled his Facebook the night before and realized his last post was about a poker tournament in Vegas. Knew it when he stopped answering texts 3 days ago. But she'd ignored that instinct just like she'd ignored the last 18 years of actual fatherhood Emily received. In the crowd, murmurs had started. Quiet once observations, really. Didn't she say her stepdad raised her? Where is he anyway? I thought he funded the whole wedding. The string quartet began to play a soft rendition of Canon and D. Too early. Emily stood at the entrance of the garden, bouquet in trembling hands, staring at the long aisle she was supposed to walk down. Alone, Susan appeared beside her, lips tight. He's probably just stuck in traffic, she whispered. Emily didn't respond. Her eyes darted toward the horizon as if maybe, just maybe, Rick would come barreling around the corner. Ty asked you. Arms open. Nothing. The guests began to turn in their seats, sensing the delay, their conversations pausing as they waited for something to happen. Anything? The officiant stepped forward slowly, glancing at Susan with a lifted brow. Shall we begin? Susan nodded too quickly. Emily didn't move. She looked down the aisle, then over her shoulder, then back at the crowd. There was no father waiting at the end. No John, no Rick. Just 150 pairs of eyes all wondering the same thing. What the hell happened here? The facade hadn't shattered yet, but hairline cracks were spreading fast. The air was still suffocating. Emily stood just beyond the trellis, still gripping the bouquet like it could anchor her to the moment. Bridesmaids whispered behind her, pretending not to see the panic rising behind her forced smile. Susan hovered like static, agitated, humming with denial, every inch of her screaming, "Keep it together." The guests had begun to check their watches. The officiant coughed politely and looked down at his script for the fourth time. The string quartet had transitioned to soft ambient noodling, trying not to betray the fact they were completely winging it now. And then Emily's phone buzzed. A single text, one line. "Sorry, kid. Work emergency. Can't make it. Number. Love you. No. We'll make it up." Just that cold, flat, dismissive. Her breath hitched. She read it once, then again. Like if she stared long enough, the words might rearrange themselves into something human. Susan saw her face fall. She didn't need to ask. "What did he say?" she whispered, eyes narrowing. Emily didn't answer. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't cry. Not yet. The body has this way of locking down the tears when there are too many people watching. Susan grabbed the phone from her hand, read it, froze, then without thinking she hissed. Unbelievable. That son of a Emily didn't flinch. She just stared down the aisle again as if trying to spot John among the blur of faces. Some muscle memory in her heart still hoped maybe he'd come anyway. Maybe he'd be waiting there, arms open, eyes kind. But that aisle was still empty. And the man she'd chosen, her real dad, had bowed out with all the warmth of an automated email. Susan started to panic. We'll figure something out. Maybe Uncle Brink can walk you down." "Or wait, what about your cousin Greg?" Emily snapped. "Greg's 15th. Susan opened her mouth again, but shut it just as quickly. She was fumbling now, grasping at straws and fantasy fixes. Reality was clawing its way through her curated illusion, and it wasn't gentle. The crowd was restless. A guest in the back coughed loud, deliberate. Another checked their phone and muttered, "Jesus." One of the bridesmaids leaned in. "You could just walk yourself down. Make it like an empowerment thing." Emily gave her a look that made her back off immediately. Empowerment wasn't the theme here. Disbelief was, because for all her tweets about fairy tale moments and reconnections, for all Susan's smugness at book club and hand-waving away John's absence, none of it had made Rick show up. He was a ghost again, just like he'd always been. Only this time, he'd waited until the cameras were rolling. And now everyone saw it. Every single person sitting in those white folding chairs now knew that the man who raised her had been told to stay home, while the man who abandoned her hadn't even bothered to fake an excuse. Until the hour of the ceremony, Emily looked at the screen one more time, then locked the phone. Her hands shook. The bouquet trembled slightly. Dreams don't always shatter like glass. Sometimes they rot mid-bloom, slow and quiet, until they collapse in your hands. And there she stood, dressed in a $4,200 gown that John paid for alone, in front of a crowd she wasn't ready to face. Not without a father. Not with that father. The whispers began like a soft breeze moving through the crowd, barely audible at first, then growing layer by layer like an unexpected gust threatening to lift the whole damn tent. I thought John raised her. He's not even here. Wait, isn't he the stepdad who funded all this? Didn't he build their deck last year by hand? It wasn't rage.
It wasn't outrage.
It was worse. Confusion. That kind of hushed, uncomfortable curiosity that creeps in when people sense a lie wobbling on its heels. Susan sat in the second row, clutching her clutch with white knuckles, trying to look serene and proud and completely in control. But her left hand wouldn't stop trembling. She kept brushing at the hem of her dress, flicking imaginary lint that wasn't there. Anything to occupy herself so she didn't have to look at Emily, because Emily was frozen at the start of the aisle. A bride with no escort, no motion, no plan B. 2 chairs down, Marcy Delaney leaned toward her husband, whispering, "I remember when John used to pick Emily up from youth choir. Every single Sunday, rain or shine." He nodded slowly.
Didn't he co-sign her student loans, too?
A third voice chimed in, some uncle from the groom's side. "So, where the hell is he?" Susan heard it. She heard all of it, like echoes bouncing off the inside of a pressure cooker. She smiled, the kind of smile you paste on when you're 2 seconds from unraveling, like tissues stretched too tight. Her lips held, but her jaw clenched so hard it clicked. She wanted to stand, to say something, anything. Maybe throw out a line about how John had a prior engagement. Maybe invent a last-minute illness or a work emergency. Anything that didn't make her look like the woman who watched her husband disappear after 18 years of fatherhood and then let him stay gone. But that would mean acknowledging him, and acknowledging him now would mean admitting the choice they'd made. So she stayed quiet, and the murmurs grew. Emily's fiancé was off to the side talking to the officiant in hushed tones, clearly stalling. The groom's mother was whispering to the maid of honor. Bridesmaids stood awkwardly in formation, unsure whether to stay posed or sit down. And Emily. She wasn't crying. She was staring straight ahead at the aisle, still clutching the bouquet like it was the only thing keeping her spine upright. Her eyes were wide, dry, unblinking, like someone waiting for the elevator doors to open and realizing they never will. One guest in the 4th row took out their phone and began typing, whispering to their neighbor. "I swear John's not here. That's wild. He was always around." Another chimed in, "Can you imagine funding a wedding and being told not to come? That's ice cold and karma." It had pulled up a chair because it wasn't just that Rick didn't show up. It was that everyone noticed, and now the social equation was shifting in real time. The real dad had ghosted. The stepdad was gone but not absent, and the entire room was doing the emotional math out loud in real time. Every glance, every whisper, every subtle shake of the head was a crack forming under Susan's perfect narrative. And there was no way to plaster it back together without admitting what they'd done. And John wasn't there to witness it, but the world was. The music faded mid-note, like someone had cut the power. The quartet looked around nervously, unsure if they should stop or loop again. The officiant stepped forward and cleared his throat, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. His voice rang out across the seated crowd like a courtroom gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise." Chairs shifted. Programs were tucked away. Everyone stood. All eyes turned toward the entrance of the aisle, expectant, hopeful, totally unaware of what they were about to witness. Emily inhaled sharply, one deep, shaky breath, then another. She stepped forward alone. The train of her gown dragged behind her like an anchor. Her heels tapped too loudly against the wood flooring beneath the carpet runner. And with every step she took, the weight of 1,000 eyes pressed harder into her skin. She reached the halfway point and paused, instinctively, waiting. That's where her father was supposed to join her. Rick in theory, Jean in truth. But there was no one. The wind picked up slightly, ruffling her veil like even the air itself was trying to flee this moment. From the front row, Susan stiffened. Her lips parted slightly as if to say something, anything, but no sound came out. She looked cornered, trapped in a social bear trap of her own design. Emily glanced sideways. Her face cracked. The officiant, confused but committed, finally asked the traditional question. Who gives this bride away? Silence. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even the rustling of dresses or suits. Just silence. Emily's mouth twitched. Her eyes darted to Susan, then to the groom, then to the guests, then back to the empty aisle behind her. Still nothing. No father stepping out to save the day. No hand reaching for hers. No second chance, strolling out of the wings like a last-minute miracle. Her lip trembled. The officiant tried again, softer now. Who gives this bride away? Susan, in a moment of panic, opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Emily whispered, No one. It came out barely audible, like the sound of something cracking internally. The officiant hesitated, then nodded almost too respectfully, and gestured her forward. She took one more step, then another. But her pace slowed, her eyes filled, her vision blurred. By the time she reached the altar, her hands were shaking so badly the bouquet was starting to come apart. One light rose fell to the ground. No one is to pick it up. The groom touched her arm gently, unsure. She flinched. It wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was collapse. All the filtered selfies, the blessed hashtags, the curated version of her life she had pushed out into the world, none of it mattered now. Because in the one moment that was supposed to define love, legacy, and family, she stood utterly, painfully alone. No John, no Rick. Just the haunting echo of what could have been, what should have been, and the cold realization that sometimes, when you choose fantasy over loyalty, you end up with neither. The sun never really sets this far north, not in late June. It just hovers near the horizon like it's too lazy to sleep, casting a golden wash over the icy waters of the Gulf of Alaska. The air smells like salt and pine and something clean enough to sting. John stood near the edge of the charter boat, weathered hands gripping his fishing rod. His jacket was zipped halfway up, his cap pulled low. Beside him, the guide adjusted some gear but didn't speak. They'd already talked enough that morning about halibut patterns, tides, tackle weight. Nothing personal, nothing emotional. Just how John liked it. He cast his line out in a fluid motion, the spool singing briefly before it silenced into a clean, patient weight. The water rippled quietly, like it respected the man staring into it. In the corner of the deck, tucked beneath a spare tackle box and an old folded map, John's phone vibrated once, then again, then 3 times in a row. He didn't look. He knew what it was. He could practically hear Susan's voice in that first text. John, please call me. Or Emily's. I was wrong. I need you. I messed up. But that phone? It might as well have been on the moon. He reached into the cooler instead, pulled out a beer, cracked it open with a hiss that echoed into the open sea. He took a long sip and exhaled, eyes fixed on the water. There was something holy about that silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of expectation. No one asking him to fix things. No one asking him to sacrifice. No one rebranding their betrayal as his fault for being too calm. Just the slow, rhythmic lapping of waves against fiberglass. John remembered the wedding date. He hadn't forgotten.
He could picture it in his head like a movie playing for someone else. Guests fanning themselves in boulder heat, Emily clutching a bouquet, Susan pretending to have it all together. And he pictured the empty aisle. He smiled to himself. Not a bitter smile, not cruel, just free. He didn't feel angry. He didn't even feel vindicated. He felt done. 18 years of giving, of showing up, of being the steady presence they could always fall back on. And now, for once, he was choosing himself, choosing the sea, the stillness, the taste of beer under a sun that never sleeps. The rod dipped slightly, a bite. He reeled slowly, steady, deliberate, not rushing, not chasing. When the fish finally breached, flapping and furious in the net, John laughed for the first time in weeks, low and easy. His phone buzzed again behind him. He didn't even turn around. Because peace isn't something you find. It's something you stop giving away. By Sunday morning, Susan had lost her composure. What began as controlled concern on wedding day unraveled into open desperation. Her calls became erratic. 10 in the first hour, 5 more overnight. Each one going straight to voicemail. Each one sounding increasingly unlike the woman who once told her husband to sit this event out because it wasn't his moment. She paced the kitchen barefoot, hair in a frantic bun, makeup smudged from yesterday's half-hearted attempt at looking put together during the reception, the one that felt more like a eulogy. Emily hadn't come downstairs. She locked herself in the guest room after the after-party, still in her wedding dress when she collapsed face first onto the guest bed. Susan had knocked twice. No response. At 8:47 a.m., Susan called again. Voicemail. She called from the house phone, then from her brother's phone, then from her old work line. Still nothing. She opened her messages. The screen was a graveyard of sent texts. Blue bubbles stacked like dominoes, every one of them unread. John, I know we hurt you. Please call. Emily's not okay. She hasn't said a word since the ceremony. I panicked. I was wrong. I didn't mean what I said. Please just let us hear your voice. You were right about Rick. We messed up. She's asking for you. I'm asking for you. By noon, Emily finally emerged, barefoot and blotchy-faced, still wearing the diamond earrings John had gifted her for her nursing school graduation. She sat down at the kitchen table like someone attending her own sentencing. Susan poured her a cup of coffee, hands shaking slightly. He's not answering, she said quietly. Emily nodded. I know. She reached for her phone, opened it to her messages, scrolled past hundreds of wedding texts and Instagram tags and congratulations posts. Found the last thread with John. The last thing she ever sent him, 2 weeks ago. I think it'll mean a lot to have my real dad there. She stared at it, thumb hovering, typed, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. You were always my dad. Always. I made a mistake. Please come home. Send. She waited. Nothing. A single check mark. No read, no reply. She tried again. A voice note this time. Her voice cracked midway through. I didn't mean to push you out. I was stupid. I don't even know what I thought. I'm so sorry. You were there every single day. I need you. I need you. She had sinned. Set the phone down. Watched the screen like it owed her a miracle. It just sat there, dark and silent. Susan pulled her cardigan tight and whispered more to herself than anyone. He always answers, but not this time.
Because when a man learns the difference between being needed and being used, he stops picking up. John sat on the dock behind the cabin he'd rented outside Kodiak. The tide was out, revealing slick black rocks and the skeletons of old crab traps tangled in seaweed. A raven caught somewhere behind him, a slow echoing croak that sounded more amused than ominous. In his lap the phone buzzed again, low, persistent, pitiful. He ignored it. He was whittling, not for any real purpose, just shaping down a driftwood stick with a small blade he'd carried in his pocket for years. The motions were mindless, meditative, the kind of quiet repetition that held back the impulse to feel too much all at once. Eventually, curiosity got the better of him. He set down the stick and flipped the phone over. 16 missed calls. 9 new messages. The last one from Emily just 20 minutes ago. "I was wrong. Dad, I'm so sorry. Please come home." He read it once. Then again, Dad. That word hung there like a trick. She hadn't called him that in years. Not sincerely. Not without the implied asterisk. Step. Not real. Stand-in. Now it was supposed to patch the hole she dug. He could almost hear the voice note beneath it. Desperate, cracking, probably filmed from the guest room she sulked in, or maybe the kitchen. The same kitchen where Susan had once stood in front of him and said she prefers her real dad. He stared at the message longer than he meant to. Not because it moved him, because it didn't. There was no spark of warmth, no aching desire to forgive, no welling up of paternal instinct. Just stillness. Like watching a movie scene you've already seen too many times. Knowing the ending, knowing the disappointment, knowing that no matter how heartfelt the monologue, the damage is already done. John let the message sit there another 10 seconds. Then his thumb hovered. One flick, deleted. No reply, no draft, no second thoughts. He scrolled through the rest. Susan's texts were longer, apologetic, panicked. "John, I should have never said what I said. I was trying to protect her moment. I didn't mean to erase you. We were wrong. Please let us talk, please." He didn't delete those. He just closed the app. He set the phone back down face first, letting the sun warm the back of it until it dimmed and shut itself off. He went back to whittling because the truth had finally crystallized. Not in her apology, not in Susan's regret, not in the sound of that word, Dad, typed too late. It had crystallized in her choice. They didn't just push him out. They replaced him. And now they were realizing the substitute never showed up. Too bad some messes don't get cleaned. Some moments don't get do-overs. And some fathers, they don't come back just because you finally realize they were the real thing all along. The internet never sleeps, and it has a taste for blood when it smells hypocrisy. It started as a throwaway post on a local Boulder subreddit. Posted by you, Venevet89. Attended a wedding this weekend where the bride's stepdad, who raised her from age 5 and paid for everything, was not even invited. She chose her real dad to walk her down the aisle. He bailed, left her standing there. Haven't stopped thinking about it. A photo was attached, blurry, shot from the second row. Emily standing alone at the head of the aisle, bouquet trembling, eyes glassy. No father, no motion. Just the raw, uncut awkwardness of a moment gone painfully wrong. The comments exploded within the hour. Wait, the guy who paid for the whole thing wasn't even allowed to attend? Imagine raising someone your whole life and getting replaced last minute. Brutal. Ungrateful doesn't even begin to cover this. This is exactly why some men go fishing in Alaska and never come back. And then came the viral versions. Screenshots on Twitter, TikTok explainer videos with dramatic music, reaction channels dissecting it like a true crime podcast. Someone on Facebook even posted a thread titled, "The Father Who Showed Up for 18 Years and Was Ghosted at the Altar." The replies were merciless. Heartless doesn't even scratch the surface. This is emotional theft, plain and simple. She doesn't deserve to call him dad now. Not when it's convenient. I hope he never answers a single one of their texts. Susan first heard about it from Marcy, the gentle, rattled phone call. "Have you seen Reddit?" Susan didn't even use Reddit, but she clicked the link Marcy texted her and watched the story unfold in real time. The post had 38,000 upvotes, then 41,000, then 63,000. A BuzzFeed article followed. Bride chooses bio-dad over stepfather who raised her. Internet explodes. She scrolled through the comments. Some are vicious. "I hope that stepdad lives the rest of his life fishing in peace. The mom's just as bad. Imagine letting your husband get replaced like a suit jacket." Others were more cutting in their restraint. "He was never a placeholder. He was the whole damn structure. You don't realize what kind of man you had until he's gone and unreachable." Susan closed the app. Emily was still in the guest room, her phone long dead, her wedding makeup still smudged and streaks under her eyes like ghost marks from a ceremony that felt less like a celebration and more like a live-streamed regret. By evening, even distant relatives had texted, "Is it true? Why didn't John walk her down? Why wasn't he there?" The real question buried under all the noise was the one Susan couldn't outrun. What made you think he'd stay loyal when you made it clear he was optional? What they hadn't understood, what everyone online understood immediately, was that love like John's doesn't survive erasure. It disappears quietly. Then it lets the silence do the talking. 3 weeks passed. Denver had cooled a bit by then, August losing its grip. The morning sharper, the light more golden than blinding. Life kept moving. Cars still crowded, I-25. Lawns still got watered. But for Susan, everything had slowed to a crawl. Emily had returned to her condo with swollen eyes and a wedding album she didn't want to open. The photos told a sanitized version of the day. Her standing alone, bouquet centered, lips pulled into a strained half-smile. They'd skipped ordering prints. The buzz around the stepdad story faded, as viral things do. But it didn't vanish. It lingered in whispers at the grocery store, at the gym. A woman at the pharmacy muttered, "Shame what they did to that man." Loud enough for Susan to hear. She said nothing. She couldn't. Then one Thursday morning, it happened. Susan walked into the local hardware store, a list in her hand. Spackle, wood glue, a replacement bulb for the back porch. She was halfway down aisle 6 when she looked up and saw him. John, tanned, calm, 10 pounds lighter, wearing an old flannel, jeans, and a beat-up baseball cap she didn't recognize. He looked good, not healed exactly, but finished, like someone who had laid down a burden that was never his to carry in the first place. For a second she froze. Then, like a reflex, "John, wait." He turned his head. Their eyes met. Susan's lips parted. Her hand twitched slightly at her side like she might reach for him, like maybe she'd blurt something rehearsed but desperate. "I'm sorry. You were right. She misses you." But before she could speak, John did something simpler. He smiled, not wide, not bitter, just enough to say, "I see you, and I'm free now." Then he turned quietly, deliberately, and walked away. No accusations, no grand monologue, no need to explain himself to the woman who watched him be erased, helped erase him, and only looked for him after the fantasy collapsed. Susan stood there in that fluorescent-lit aisle next to garden shears and rusted screwdrivers, holding her shopping list like it could still give her purpose. But it couldn't, because John's silence wasn't absence anymore. It was presence. It was everything she never gave him. The last word, the final choice. The dignity of walking away without needing to be seen. That was his triumph. Not revenge, not payback. Just a man who finally stopped asking for a seat at a table where they'd long since taken away his chair, and walked out into a life that no longer asked for permission.